understanding what document size you need. In this tutorial, we will learn about how to identify the size of the document we need to Photoshop. It's always better to know how our image is going to be displayed in Photoshop. If we are aware of that, then we'll know how big document we'll need to work with. In this tutorial, we are going to learn about 3 most common ways to display our images. The 3 categories are halftone, continuous tone, and screen. And each of the categories have different needs, about which shall learn as we move ahead. The printing press is the most common example of halftone printing. In order to be printed on a printing press, the document needs to be converted into a halftone pattern. This halftone pattern is made up of a few large and a few small dots, with a unique pattern for each of the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black ink. When we print these dot pattern one over the other, they create the illusion of continuous tone, though in reality it's not a continuous tone image. If we look at anything that's been printed, like a book or a box of cereal, under a magnifying glass, we can see the individual dots of different size. So, along with having an idea of the width and height of our printed document, we need to have an idea of the resolution or how many pixels per inch or dots per inch we need to print for the quality that we want. And that depends on the line screen that we are going to be printing. On a printing press, the line screen is based on the quality of the paper that we are printing to, and this contributes to something called dot gain. When we print on a lower quality paper, we find that the ink spreads and dots tend to smudge into one another. This is why it is very hard to hold details on a lower quality paper. For example, we cannot print on a newspaper with a very high line screen because of the dot gain, which happens due to the coarseness of the paper. So we might be restricted to an 85 line screen. But if we are printing to a high-end paper for a coffee table book, it may be possible for us to print as high as a 300 line screen. So as a thumb rule, we need 1.5 to 2 times the line screen, which is referred to as the LPI, lines per inch in pixels per inch in Photoshop. Keeping this in mind, it's really important to work with the printer when we are preparing our documents to be printed to the printing press. This way, we can decide on a line screen depending on the ink and paper that we are using. And from there, we can decide whether we want 1.5 times the line screen or double the line screen in pixels per inch, so as to get the quality that we want. And now let us look at an example of second category. This is the continuous tone, one of the most common examples in an inkjet printer. Technically, inkjet printer aren't really continuous tone. The printing technology in these is different from that of the printing press. Even though they print dots, we might see dots when we are looking at an inkjet print under a microscope, but they won't appear to be like the halftone pattern that's created by the printing press. It is because an inkjet printer uses a diffusion diether to change the positioning of dots, whereas the printing press changes the size of the dot. Thus, to speak on technical grounds, printing presses can in fact print a diether pattern if required, but most of the time they print the halftone pattern. An inkjet printer needs a resolution between 240 and 360 pixels per inch, typically based on the quality required. If we print the same image at 240, 300 and 360 pixels per inch, we can see the difference. Often, we find that most people can easily differentiate between 240 and 300 pixels per inch. but relatively very few people will be able to tell the difference between 300 and 360 pixels per inch. However, the distance from which we view will make a difference. If the image is supposed to be viewed from an arm's distance away, then we may have to print it at a higher resolution. Then it is going to be viewed from across the room. Another example of continuous tone printing is on the photographic paper. For example, if a photographer is sending images to a lab to have them printed, in this case, he simply needs to find out from the lab personnel as to what resolution they want the file, because they will know the optimal resolution needed for their printer. Now, let's discuss the document size we will need to display our images on a screen, such as a monitor or a phone. In this case, it is the total pixel count which is to be considered and not the resolution, because each of those devices can display a specific number of pixels. Hence, our image should have the required number of pixels to fill the amount of screen up to which we want it to be displayed. If we have the correct pixel count, then we can set the resolution to anything, because the device will be plotting those pixels at a 1:1 relationship between the pixel and the file and the pixel that it can display. So, to summarize, in case we are printing to the printing press, our document should be having 1.5 to 2 times the line screen in resolution in Photoshop. And in case of continuous tone printing devices, often we use a resolution between 300 and 360 pixels per inch. And for screen, the resolution aspect is ignored and total pixel count for the device on which it is going to be displayed is taken to consideration. In the next tutorial, we will learn about changing the document size in Photoshop in order to meet the exact needs for our output device.